In this video, I'm going to talk you through why comparison pages are an absolute must for any SaaS company. I'm going to break down the ROI. I'm going to break down the hesitations and why you should ignore them. I'll even break down the anatomy of a winning comparison page. All that and more in this video. Stick around. Let's get to it. So first things first, why are comparison pages so essential? Why are they a must? Why does every SaaS company need these pages on their website? And the answer is simple. Your prospects are doing comparison searches, period. It's a fact, I promise you. Yes, the buyer journey is going to look different for different industries, different products, different audiences, etc. But at some point in their buying journey, they're going to reach an evaluation stage. Best part is that evaluation stage actually happens just before they're about to purchase. So if we know that these comparison searches are happening in the evaluation stage right before a purchase is going to happen, that's why it's a no-brainer. That's why you need to be there. If those searches are going to happen and you're just going to blissfully ignore them, well, guess who's not going to? That's right, your competitors. They will be there. They get to control the narrative. They get to dominate that search result. They get to win the deal. I don't want that for you. And in fact, when we look at the 6 stages of the B2B sales process as Gong so fantastically laid out in this visual, we can see that the evaluation stage is actually after the intent stage. So by this stage, your buyer has already decided they want to buy. They've gone through the awareness, interest, consideration, intent, where they've kind of made that decision that they want this thing, and they're now evaluating their options. As soon as they finish that evaluation stage, it's a purchase. It's happening. They've made that call. So you just need to get yourself into that evaluation set and then control the narrative. That's it. That's exactly what we're going to talk through here. So what does this mean for you? To put it simply, comparison pages are a way that you can almost skip the line of the buyer journey, right? You don't need to be the one every single time creating every single piece of content all the way from awareness to interest to consideration, etc. Every stage of that B2B sales funnel, you don't need to be the one that's creating every single touch point. Can you? Yes. Long term, should you? Also, yes. A lot of opportunity there. But the reality is, these comparison pages are a way that you can jump in later on and still potentially win the deal. The bottom line is this: that comparison search is happening. Now, you can either jump in with your point of view, or you can stick your head in the sand and let your competitors do it for you. Option one sounds better to me. So with all that said, why would you still not create these pages? What are those hesitations? What have I heard in the past many times? Let's jump in. So no matter how good comparison pages sound on the surface, I constantly hear the same 4 hesitations. Every single time, like clockwork, I hear the same things. Let's talk about them. First, I don't want to add more logos to their consideration set. I don't want to introduce a new competitor that my prospect may not have even known about, and then just like that, they win the deal. I'm here to tell you right now, they already know. They know that logo exists. They know that competitor is in the market. They know that that's an option. And if they don't, well, they're going to find out soon anyway. So you can either create a page that compares you to them, that lets you position yourself as the better option, or you can sit back and let someone else do it for you in a way that's probably not going to make you look as good. Plus, the opportunity cost of not creating this page far outweighs the potential risks of introducing a new competitor to their consideration set anyway. The second hesitation: our review will be so biased, so we shouldn't even do it anyway. Yeah, you're right. There's going to be bias, and that is totally okay. There's ways around that. There's ways you can work with that and use it to your favor. All right, one of my favorite examples is Close CRM with all of their comparison pages to folks like Pipedrive, HubSpot, etc. Above the fold on these pages, they address that fact head on, right? They have a whole section that says, have you ever seen a comparison page where the challenger wins? No, neither have we. So this is how we're going to do it different. So this is how we're going to approach this page. They're upfront. They say that, yeah, Close is probably going to look better on this page, but what we're going to do is offer a legitimate review. Where does Close win? Where does Pipedrive win? Who is Close for? Who is Pipedrive for? Right? When is Close not the better option? By owning this narrative, by having control of the page, well, they get to choose all of those things. I won't spoil too much because there's a lot when we get to the anatomy of the page that's going to really help here. But being able to control that conversation is massive. You get to help self-disqualify people that you don't even want to talk to anyway. You get to talk about how you versus that competitor, where you're different, who may be a better fit for Pipedrive, so that your sales funnel, so that your conversations aren't just a waste of time with unqualified folks. You can do that through this review. And yeah, it's biased, but you can still work through it. The third hesitation: we don't have competitors. No one else does what we do. We're an all-in-one. Good. That's a positive for you. That's even more reason to create this page. So let's break that down. Typically, here's a story that I very frequently come up against. You present all this opportunity, look at how much search volume there is, look at all the potential value we could drive with comparison pages. And then the client comes back and they say, whoa, 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 we don't have competitors. We're in an industry of one. It's just us. We're the only option. And I'm here like, whoa, hold the phone. What? That's typically where the only one conversation comes up. Competitors are all point solutions. Good. I love that. That's what I love to hear. It's totally possible that there are no other all-in-one solutions out there that do what you do. Good. It's good for you. That puts you in a good spot. But that doesn't mean you have no competitors. That means you have many competitors across many different verticals. Every single potential use case of your all-in-one product is going to have its own competitor set. So when we think of comparison pages, well, you get to now go after every single one of those areas, every single one of those verticals. And because you're an all-in-one, you're probably going to build up that fact, that element where you may offer that comparison page, that comparison one-to-one in that point solution area. You may give your competitor credit. Yeah, they're actually pretty good at this one thing. I'll give them that. But they don't do this, or that. They don't have these other areas that you're going to need. If you want to get those and still use his competitor, well, you're going to have to Frankenstein model it. You're going to have to bolt on a ton more tools, spend more money, up that cost, increase complexity, all of that. Those are benefits for you because those don't exist. So yeah, no one does what you do. Sure, maybe that's possible, but that doesn't mean you just need to stick your head in the sand again and ignore all the actual competitors out there in your prospects' eyes. And finally, I hear this all the time. Our competitors are going to get mad. They're not going to like it. What if they sue us? If they get mad, that's a feature, not a bug. That means that they are feeling anxious. They're feeling disrupted. They are not confident in their ability to beat you. Now, if your comparison page has a ton of lies and is actually just untrue, yeah, that's a problem. Don't do that. Don't say they don't do things that they do. Don't throw them under the bus without being honest. Sure, hopefully that's a no-brainer. But if you're creating comparison pages that are actually honest, truthful, telling zero lies, and they make you look better, well, your competitor has nothing to stand on. They can't come at you. They can't get mad because it's honest, because it's truthful. In fact, I worked with one B2B SaaS company over the past year creating, 40 to 50 comparison pages. They're an all-in-one solution, so they got to play the point solution game. But, 50 of these pages, of those 50, they got one cease and desist. Fine, delete the page. Don't worry about the legal costs. And then one competitor asked them to correct something on there and position it a bit differently. Easy fix, that's okay. And they were fine with the page staying up. So you create 50 pages and you get to keep 49 long term. Well, they're absolutely dominating the search results for pretty much every single one of those pages. They're in the top 3 for them versus that competitor's name. 1,000, 2,000 search visits a month just through this content. It's converting at 5 to 10% because these are high intent pages. This has been an absolute smash for them. And they only got one competitor that was actually upset enough to try to push something forward. And honestly, not a lawyer, not legal advice, they probably would have won, but it's not worth the hassle. So just pull the page. But yeah, they're going to get mad, and that's totally okay. So now that we're over those hesitations, hopefully, let's talk ROI. Let's talk returns. Let's talk about the value these pages can actually drive quantifiably for your business. And I'll give you the heads up, there's going to be some math. It's going to be basic calculations, simple formulas, but I wanted this to be thorough. I wanted this to be in depth and not just another ROI section where we say, hey, look at the number. It went up. Ta-da! With no detail, no rationale, nothing about it, just a number that looks bigger than before. No, I want to show you exactly how this all works, exactly how the calculations stack together. And to do that, let's do some basic napkin math, aka math you could literally do on a napkin. That's how simple it is. So how do we estimate this? First of all, let's figure out our variables. What are we working with here? One, search volumes, click-through rates, page conversion rates, the LTV of a new user, how much it's going to cost you to create these pages, and how many pages you're going to create. There's a ton there. I promise it'll all make sense. Essentially, how many people are searching for this thing? How many of those clicks do we think we can get? How well are we going to then convert those clicks? What are every single one of those conversions worth? And how much is it going to cost for us to build all of this? Once you know those variables, that's all there is to work with. Then you just get to put it together, figure out how much the input is going to cost and how much the output is going to result in. So with that, a couple of simple formulas here. We need to figure out the potential clicks, the value per click, and then put those together to map out the entire opportunity size. I'm not going to spend this entire video talking through the specific formulas. They're all in this blog post. I'll link it somewhere in the video here that you can jump into to see them, copy them, etc. But the simplest way to put it is search volume times click-through rate that you could expect to get. That's the size of the pie. That's how many clicks there are for you to go earn. That's the ceiling. Value per click, well, that's how well you're going to convert new visitors at what value. So from that, we now know the size of the pie with a dollar amount on it. We know how big the opportunity is. When we talk investment size, it's basically any cost of strategy up front to do the research, to do the planning, etc., plus the cost of production. So we want to publish 50 pages. How many does each cost? Done. Put that all together and we have our investment size. If long term, the opportunity size outweighs the investment size, good. Means there's a net positive outcome. So the very simple ROI there, again, opportunity size minus investment size. And since these pages aren't just going to be a one and done, you get some value in month one and then they die, since they have that recurring value every single month, when we actually do the calculations, we can stretch the opportunity size and multiply that by whatever amount of months we really think that these can last for to get a true, accurate representation of the potential value from these pages. So if we say, for simple math, estimate that each page can last for 36 months. It could be much, much longer if you properly maintain these things. In fact, I see comparison pages from 10 years ago that still exist, that are still driving value, but I digress. Let's keep it simple. 3 years, realistic life cycle for that. And then the picture is going to look different in a couple years. So by publishing one page, it gives us 36 months of value. Well, we now get to take our opportunity size that we calculated on a monthly basis times 36. So now we see our total opportunity. Now with that, to maintain these pages, so it isn't just to publish once and then let them die, there's probably going to be some monthly investment costs, upkeep, optimization, etc. It's fine. We'll bake that in too. So we can now put together our upfront investment with our monthly investment over those 36 months, and we get an adjusted return of total opportunity minus total investment. And that gives us our actual true ROI that we can forecast out multiple years. Let's run through an example. We'll take a $500 a month B2B SaaS product. We'll make some assumptions, and then we'll see how these formulas all come together. So first, search volume. Let's just say we've already done this research. We know there's about 1,500 searches a month for all the comparison terms that we're looking at. From that, about a 15% click-through rate is our ceiling. The pages from visitor all the way through to closed one, so calculating all the deal stages, is about 0.4%. New user LTV, so when we factor in churn, we factor in cost of goods sold, it's about 7K. Cost per page, we'll say is $500. We're going to create 25 of them. Strategy cost at $5,000, monthly cost at $2,000. Those are the variables. Yes, that's a fire hose, but we'll show how those all now map out together. So for this, when we look at the simplified calculations, there's a ton of numbers. They're on screen. I'm not going to spend time on every single one. But basically, we get an opportunity size per month of just under $7,000 of value. And our upfront investment size, including the strategy phase, including the production of these things, is going to be $17,500. So technically, if in month one you publish every single one of these, the first month, you're going to go into the red because you just created all of these things. But remember, that's month one. We're forecasting 36 months of value here at just under $7,000. So when we really adjust that ROI, when we add in those 36 months, well, we're looking at a total opportunity of just under 250K in value from these pages. Yeah, 1,500 searches a month creates 250K in potential value over the course of 3 years. Stack together all of the investment size, which ends up being just under 90K, you're looking at a near 2-3x return on the spend. You're looking at a total adjusted return of just over $150,000 in profit from this investment. That sounds like a no-brainer to me. And honestly, some of these are conservative because these search volumes, this is what we can see from our research. The reality is there's usually twice as many searches that are actually happening that the SEO tools out there just can't calculate. They can't see it. It's all good. We just get to bake that in. So this is basically the floor calculations for what's possible. Not to mention, if your conversion rates are actually better than average, which is very possible given the high intent of these pages, well, the return can be even greater. So here's the TLDR, right? Maybe you skipped ahead. Maybe that was too many numbers. Let me break it down into a couple of simple bullets. $500 a month B2B SaaS product with average churn rates, etc., maps out to about $7,000 per user in lifetime value. If we create 25 comparison pages, That total 36-month investment with all of the upkeep costs is just under 90,000, and we're projecting that the total 36-month return would be just under 250,000. That gives us an ROI of about 170% on comparison pages. Now, before anyone runs off and says, this is the number Josh said, it's 170%. So if it's anything less than that, what are we doing? This is terrible. Or if it's anything more than that, you lied to me. There's so much nuance here, and every single situation is going to look different. Every single industry is going to look different as well. This is just to showcase how we can think about the ROI of comparison pages, how A leads to B leads to C, how an investment can connect the dots over 3 years and result in value for you and your business. So we know why comparison pages matter so much. We know what the hesitations are, and we know why they aren't actually that relevant, and we know what the potential return looks like. The big question now is, okay, great. How do you build one? What needs to go into it? What section should exist on that page? What's the priority? How do you know what to do, where, how to talk about it, etc.? And that is what we're going to dig into right now. So the anatomy of a great SaaS comparison page, it actually isn't that complex, right? We can really break it down into a couple of key parts, a couple of key sections, and then talk about the nuance of each of those. So first, before we even get into the page itself, I want to talk through the SEO details, right? This isn't going to be the first thing you do. In fact, it's probably closer to the end, but it's so mission critical that we need to talk about it first. Because if you build the best comparison page in the world, it's fantastic. It tells the story perfectly, but it's not actually optimized for discovery. So no one's going to find it. No one's going to see it. 0 impressions, 0 clicks, 0 leads. Well, then it doesn't matter how good it is because it got no eyeballs, because it didn't actually work, didn't do anything. So first things first, we need to understand how to position a few key SEO details on every single comparison page. The two that are most important, it's going to sound incredibly simple, are the title and the URL. That's it. Those matter a ton. Yes, there's a lot of nuance on the page that we can get into as well, but if your title and your page URL are both really bad and not well optimized at all, well, then it's never going to work anyway. So titles, very simple. Don't get cute at the start. Just start with brand versus brand and then some type of click-through worthy element at the end. So for example, Notion versus Airtable, which should you choose in 2024? It's simple, it works. It's going to rank, it's going to drive clicks. ClickUp versus Asana, which project management tool is best? Simple, it's going to work, it's going to rank. Jobber versus Housecall Pro, which is best for your business? Simple, it's going to work. You don't need to come up with the most creative page title in the world from day one. As you start to rank, sure, experiment, take some chances, take some risks. But day one, keep it simple, keep it straightforward. There's nothing wrong with that. And when we talk URL paths, it's the exact same scenario. Keep it simple. You don't need to get creative here. If anything, get even less creative with the URL than you would the title, right? My recommendation every single time, set up a compare subfolder. I use the word compare. You can use comparison versus whatever. Compare subfolder that houses every single one of your comparison pages. And the URL for each page is very simple. It's you versus them. That's it. So the URL becomes, for example, notion.so/compare/Notion versus Airtable. ClickUp.com/compare/ClickUp versus Asana. GetJobber.com/compare/Jobber versus Housecall Pro. Simple, to the point, very clean and easy. And lastly, meta descriptions. This is where you can get creative. Early on in the early days of SEO, meta descriptions mattered a ton, right? So you could see all the keyword stuffing, you could see secondary keywords, just ugly meta descriptions that nobody actually wanted to see. Well, now these meta descriptions are mostly just ad copy. They're mostly just a way to increase the clicks you get when you already rank. So this is where you can get creative. Just think of it like ad copy, but you have a 160 character cap. With that, go to town. Talk about whatever you think is a good differentiator. Talk about whatever you think is going to inspire a click. Get creative, that's fine, but keep your page title and your URL very simple. Now, beyond the SEO details that, again, you're probably going to do near the end anyway, but they take 5 minutes, so just do them whenever. Let's talk about above the fold. Let's talk about the first thing that a new visitor is going to see when they hit your page. And it's very simple. Use a high contrast H1 that makes it crystal clear what the page is about. So again, I love Close CRM with their pages. Look at their HubSpot page. It's just choosing the right CRM, Close versus HubSpot. If I clicked on a Close versus HubSpot link from search and I land on this page, I'm feeling good. I feel like I'm in the right spot. I'm probably not going to just bounce back because of some confusing, clearly biased H1 that shows that this is not going to be a real comparison page. I don't feel that at all. This is where I'm supposed to be. Fantastic. I wanted to compare these two. I'm going to compare these two. It's very simple, right? You can make it clear with that H1 what you're going to talk about. And then underneath that is when you can start to establish a bit more context for the page. So again, I talked about close with how they start to call out that there may be some bias, but address it head on how they're going to actually get over that. So they say in this example, they're here to compare cost versus capability. So what can you do in each and how much does it cost? That sounds valuable, sounds simple, sounds like something I want as a reader. And they're basically going to talk through when close is a better option and when HubSpot is a better option. That's also what I'm looking for as a reader. So just like that, I'm now likely to scroll. And if I'm more likely to scroll, it means your above the fold section did its job. It kept me on the page. I didn't bounce back to the search results. That's a win. You're off to a good start. Now, below the fold, this is where the order matters a bit less. This is where you can actually experiment, but there are a few key sections that you need to have in these comparison pages. One, it's the one you probably expected. It's some type of feature comparison. Now, your comparison pages shouldn't just be one big table that has all the features and check marks and X's and all of that, and then call it a day. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't still have a table of some kind that compares features, that compares functionality. Because again, think about the intent of your visitor. They're trying to compare you versus someone else. They're going to want to know what each product can do. Even if some of these feel like table stakes and it's check marks on both sides, that's okay. It doesn't mean you need every single feature, but say the things that they know you need to have or that they think you need to have. That way, it's no longer a concern. They're no longer worried about if your product does X, Y, or Z, because you've said yes. Right. And with this table, well, yeah, that's where you can also start to point out some of the differentiators between you and your competitor. If there's an area where they actually don't do it, so back to the all-in-one example, you're an all-in-one platform, fantastic. That means there's a ton of features that competitor doesn't have by choice, but they don't have it. So you get to put check marks for you and X's for them, and there's nothing they can say about it because it's the truth. So one example of this done well is the Avoma comparison page versus Gong. So the reason why I think this is done well is because these two tools, there's overlap for sure, but they're almost targeting different markets. And that's a good thing, because if there's search volume for X versus Y, and you know that you can win certain types of deals, fantastic. This feature comparison page can actually play to your advantage. So for example, Gong is focused on the sales side of things. Maybe Avoma is focused more on note taking, if that's what their perspective is. They get to use this table to frame that context. They get to point out the areas that someone that's probably going to be more interested in Avoma anyway is going to care more about. And then they get to say that Gong doesn't do those things because they don't by choice, but that's okay because they still get the visual. What we see right here, it's a check mark for Avoma, it's an X for Gong. Gong could do the exact same thing and just flip it and talk about all of the advanced, sales recording features that Gong has that Avoma doesn't. And that's also good. That's also fine because that's where Gong is going to have an advantage. So you see the point here. Use this table not to say every single thing that you do, but to address the things that your visitors are going to expect, and then also point out a few areas where you have an edge over your competitors. Another way to use this table as well is to actually only include the things that you can't do in the competitor's tool. This isn't going to be the approach for everyone every single time. But I like the way Close does it, again, just to keep that trend rolling, where they frame the section not as like Close versus Pipedrive, but as what can you not do in Pipedrive. So just with that one heading, they're now framing this next section to be a bunch of check marks for Close, a bunch of X's for Pipedrive, and that's okay because they said that. They're not just going to say, what can you do in either tool? And then it's just a bunch of X's to make it look like Pipedrive can do nothing. Well, no, there's other things that they are going to be able to do, but this is where you really get to lean into the differentiators. So Close gets to say all of their features and functionality that you actually can't do in the competitor. This is where you get to highlight all of those things. So maybe it's a blend of the two. Maybe you lead with an actual feature comparison page or comparison table, and then you get into something like this further down the page. It's up to you, right? But this is just two good ways to approach this table. Now, beyond the actual functionality that you're going to cover in this feature comparison table, this next section is one that I see getting left out way too frequently, and that is the qualitative differentiators. So we think of comparisons, we think of, okay, a table, like we said before, with a bunch of checks, a bunch of X's, and that's it. That's the comparison. The reality is there's so much nuance. There's so much under the hood that you could talk about, stories you could tell that just get left off way too frequently. So what I always recommend is find maybe it's 3 to 5 different areas where you have a qualitative edge over your competitor. With those 3 to 5 areas, build them out into the page, right? Think of it as conversion copywriting. How can you make that known? How can you big up those use cases, big up those areas so that it's very clear why you have an edge? So a couple examples. One, ClickUp and their comparison versus Asana. ClickUp thinks they have a big edge on integrations. Fair, maybe they do. So that's what they chose to focus on. There's some nuance to that. There's some qualitative aspects to this. They get to put logos that me as a potential user may see and go, oh, actually, I do use that tool. I don't know if Asana has that. Interesting. I do use, maybe it's EverHour to track my time, and Asana doesn't integrate with that. That's going to be a deal breaker. That matters. It's not the only way to do it, of course, because when we look at MailChimp, they talk about a lot of their AI-powered content tools versus Klaviyo. So it's not necessarily core features and then checks and X's. It's MailChimp saying that they have the edge when it comes to AI. They have a content optimizer. They have a creative assistant. These are things that I assume, based on this page, Klaviyo doesn't have. So MailChimp has decided this is where we think we win. So we're going to highlight that on the page. And then Unbounce, their page versus Instapage. Unbounce has been around for longer. They have way more data. That's really the advantage they're leaning into. So they're making that incredibly well known, because a big feature within Unbounce is a lot of their AI optimization. So they get to say we have 2 billion points of conversion data that inform our models. Instapage can't say that. We have X% average higher lifts and conversions from people that use this tool within Unbounce, but you can see it gets a bit more qualitative. It's not just a feature of we have AI optimization, check versus X. They're talking about why that matters. They're contextualizing that advantage that they believe they have. Now, one of my favorite ways to reduce the perceived bias of these comparison pages is to actually include a section on when you should choose the competitor instead. Sounds crazy, but hear me out. If you include a section that talks about when the best decision may actually be to choose the competitor, you can actually let your visitors either self-qualify themselves or self-disqualify themselves. So what I mean by that is maybe you're best for large companies and the competitor that you're comparing yourself against is best for small companies. Well, you don't probably want a bunch of those SMB prospects filling up your sales pipeline, taking up your salespeople's time. So by including something like that on the page where you say, if you're less than 10 employees, for example, or if you're just starting out, if your revenue is under X, it's probably best to use this other competitor. By doing that, A, you don't want to work with them anyway. They're probably not a good fit for your product anyway, so it's fine. You're not really losing anything. You're also then saving a bunch of time. And if I'm actually in bucket A, if I am part of a large company, well, now I'm going to feel even better because I may have been evaluating A versus B, but you just said B is best for small companies. I may not take it at face value, of course, but it's a small step where in my mind now, my perception is, well, you're the one that I probably do want to use because I'm a large company. You say it's best for large companies. Interesting. Or maybe your advantage is that you specialize in one specific industry and your competitor is industry agnostic. That could be an advantage where maybe you focus on just healthcare. If you can say that on the page, we are the XYZ for healthcare companies. Competitor, they work with anyone. That is a differentiator because if I'm now not at a healthcare company, of course, I'm going to just go with competitor, but that's a win for you anyway because they weren't going to be qualified regardless. And if I am at a healthcare company, well, you now said exactly who you work with, and it's me. So I feel even better about where I'm at. So one good example of this actually is Chili Piper and their comparison page versus Calendly. They say out loud, if you're just looking for a simple scheduling tool and don't need a lot of bells and whistles, Calendly is probably right for you. I love this. Here's why. This basically says to me that if I'm not actually in the market for something comprehensive and I do just want something simple, I do just want a link I can send to someone, cool, I'll go to Calendly. Well, I'm probably never going to buy Chili Piper anyway if that's the case. But if I actually do think that I'm in the market for something bigger, if I want more than just a simple scheduling tool, oh, Chili Piper, you have my attention now, right? You've made it clear that there's more that you can do than just Calendly. Great. Tell me more. I'm going to keep scrolling. I'm still here. I'm maybe interested. And that alone, again, lets me self-select that I care more about what you're going to say. I want to stick around. I want to hear more. You got me on the hook. Now, it'd be impossible to talk about the anatomy of any landing page without talking about social proof. The reality is customer stories, quotes, and logos, they're the name of the game. You can't ignore it. They exist for a reason. They're relevant for a reason. And that reason is they work. Just think about it. Option one, 10 full case studies, all from companies that are similar to my size, that are in a similar industry, where the person they're interviewing and talking to looks just like me. They're in the same role versus option number two has a couple of cookie cutter testimonials that like don't really say anything. And I have no idea who those people are. They're in random industries. All else being equal, obviously option one is the choice. And all they did was share proof, was share stories, was share actual quotes from people that I may already know. So whatever you can do to reduce the anxiety of a potential buyer, do it. Social proof is one of the best ways to do that. If I don't know who you are yet, if I don't necessarily trust you, but I see a ton of my peers and a ton of people that are similar to me saying very positive things about you and your tool, fantastic. My anxiety level is going to go down with the more of those stories and quotes and logos that I see. So I'm going to give you 3 social proof assets that you should weave into every single comparison page you make. One, it's logos. Weave in those relevant logos. Yes, sounds cliche, been there, done that. You already knew this, but it works, plain and simple. If I see a lot of brands that I know, brands that I trust, brands that I admire using your tool, it's a check. It's not going to be the one and only thing that influences me to say yes or no, but it's definitely going to push me closer to the yes, because I'm now less worried that you're just some random tool that's going to die in 6 months, because I see brands I trust trusting you as well. Second, relevant quotes. Alongside the logos, plug in actual faces of people that I may even know in the industry, people that I probably have seen before. Bonus points if these quotes then also connect into the use cases in the areas that you're already bigging up as being an advantage. If I see a quote from a person I know in a role that's like mine at a company that's like mine who says, yeah, it's true, this feature, fantastic, couldn't live without it, that is going to have some influence over me as a potential buyer because I trust that person and they're saying it. Okay, I'm paying attention. And third, relevant customer stories, the case studies. Honestly, non-negotiables. These need to be there in some capacity. Every single comparison page, I'm telling you right now, should have at least one story that's a company like your ICP. That's the same size, the same type of role. If you're selling to VPs of marketing, it's a VP of marketing who you talk to or someone in a similar role that talks about how they went from A to Z with your product. This is huge. This can make the difference because you get to frame out the situation they were in before they found you. That's going to be relevant to me because I'm probably in the same situation as a buyer. I'm going to see what they hired your product to do. Why did they choose you over the others? How did your product then help them? What were they able to do? And what were the results? So you tell this whole story. If I can put myself in the shoes of that person, of that buyer, in their scenario at the start, I can also probably extrapolate my own situation and say, okay, well, they hired your product to do X. I could do the same. Okay. And it created, these results. Well, I may see the same results. And just like that, again, my anxiety keeps going down because you've now shown me that you've done the thing you said you can do before. And it's a company I know, it's a company I trust. That's huge. Like that alone can be the reason that I pick you in the end. And bonus points too, if you have a customer story from someone who actually switched from the competitor you're comparing yourself against, that's massive because then you get the extra context of I had been using this tool, here's where it was falling short, so I switched, here's what I got as a result, and it worked. That alone, again, is going to help push someone closer and closer to that final decision. And the last 2 sections, they're fairly quick. One, relevant FAQs. And when I say the word relevant, I mean relevant. Don't treat this like an SEO play where you just plug in a bunch of ugly secondary keywords that no one actually cares about, no one's actually asking, and then check a box that you had FAQs. No, use this section to actually frame and then answer real questions that you're probably going to get and you've gotten in the past from prospects. Because if you can get ahead of it, fantastic. They're going to already have some of those hesitations addressed, right? So for example, on our SEO services page, there's a few things that we hear all the time that we know are going to be asked. One, it's around pricing. Is this more expensive than just doing it myself? Two, how quickly can you actually get started with this? Do I have to wait 3 months? Do I have to wait 6 months? Can I do it tomorrow? Three, how long does it actually take to get results? So these are going to vary, but by addressing these questions head on right away, off the bat, you get to stay one step ahead. You get to hit on the hesitations before they're actually hesitations. You get to address the things they're probably going to ask you anyway before they even ask you. Because if there was something that was sitting that I just really wasn't sure about, it was really holding me back from taking that next step, but I see you talking about it in these FAQs, that may be the small push that puts me over the edge, right? And by using like an accordion section like this, I always recommend that. It means you can keep them all collapsed by default. So if I don't care about any of these questions and I'm visiting the page, fantastic. I'm scrolling right by. That's fine. I can just self-select what I want to ask and what I want to see, but you at least create the option for someone to go deeper and dig in. And then finally, very simple section, just use a high contrast call to action section at the bottom. Something that if I am a skimmer and I wanted to just speed through the page, this is going to catch my attention. This is going to be something that stands out amongst the rest of the sections it's within. Use a heading that like clearly positions your value prop as being relevant. Have some call to actions in there. You've seen this before many times. You've done it before yourself. Like there's not too much nuance here to really dig into. I like Drift's example on their comparison page versus Intercom. It basically talks about the category they're in and why they're number one. It pushes an interactive demo. It's simple. There's nothing here that's crazy, and that's okay because it's going to drive action. It's going to inspire that next step. So that's it. That's the anatomy. If your comparison page has every single one of those aspects covered, it's probably going to do numbers. I'm telling you that right now. You're going to be able to speak directly to your prospects. You're going to be able to convince them why you're better than the alternatives, and you're actually going to rank in search. Win, win, win. So what do you do now? How do you actually put all of this into action? I'm going to give you two simple things to start with that are going to get the ball rolling. One, brainstorm a list of competitors from your prospect's perspective. So build up a list of all the other potential names that they could find. The reason I say from your prospect's perspective is because it doesn't really matter what you think at all. All that matters is what your prospect is going to be able to find. When they're building a consideration set, who are they probably going to have in it? So some of my favorite ways to do this, look at the G2s, the Capterras, the software advices, etc. for your categories and write down who you see, because that's what your prospect's doing. They're going to G2 and they're looking up whatever type of software, and then they're building a list of everyone they see within reason, of course, but that's where you're going to get logos from. That's where you're going to get the names that they're at least thinking about. They're at least considering, right? That's step one. Step two, Google best category software for the categories you're in. Just Google it like your prospect would. Who's ranking, which lists pop up, and who's in them. They're going to do that as well. So you should basically look at whatever they're seeing, pull those names into a list, pull them into a doc, a spreadsheet, whatever, and really start to build out this set of competitors that your prospect is probably going to think about. And then finally, take that list, add in any names that you know are missing, that you just know are competitors that you've lost deals to in the past or you've won deals from in the past. And that'll give you this map of competitors that you could potentially talk about. You could potentially build comparison pages around. And once you have that map in place, prioritize accordingly, right? This is where you can start to layer in search volume. If there's one competitor that just has a ton of search volume, it's probably worth doing that one first. You know that the pie is big, so let's go after it. Let's try to get those results early. If there's competitors where you know you're always 1v1, it's you versus that competitor, maybe that's where you start, right? So the prioritization side of things, that's where there's going to be some nuance, but take your list you brainstormed, sort it however you want to, and then just start to create these pages. I promise you, you'll see results. And if you don't want to do that, if you don't have time, if you've got other things on the go, other priorities, well, you can just hire us to do it for you. Very simple. Drop a note, get started. We'll do all the research. We'll do the brainstorming. We'll do the frameworking of the pages. We'll do the copywriting. We'll do the publishing. We'll do the optimization, long-term, etc. Everything I've said in this video, consider it done, and you have to do nothing. Lift no fingers at all. It's done. Hand it to us, and we'll get rolling. So there you have it. That is why comparison pages are an absolute must. That is how you map out the ROI. That is how you build the page itself, how you structure it, how you create winning comparison pages and get a ton of results from search. I hope you jump at this. I hope you take action. I hope you publish these because I've seen time and time again, the results are just off the charts. So with that, hopefully this was helpful. We'll be talking soon.